Welcome back to Hardball. Defense attorney Don West began his case with the now infamous knock-knock joke. Tomorrow, the defense hopes to close on a stronger note than it began. Nearly a 3-week trial is now over, and this afternoon's closing arguments by the prosecution saw defense attorney Mark O'Mara will now be trying to convince the jury that George Zimmerman is not guilty of murdering Trayvon Martin. Chances are we won't see another knock-knock joke. How strong is the defense's case? And what are the strongest points from the prosecution that he'll have to rebut? We continue now with our panel of Lisa Bloom, Alex Ferrer, and Joseph Haynes Davis, and we're joined by criminal defense attorney Midwin Charles. So, Lisa Bloom, you're tomorrow's defense attorney. What are you going to do?
Well, first of all, I would start by saying that the prosecution asked you a lot of questions in opening statement, and since they don't have the answers, you don't have the answers, that's reasonable doubt. I really don't even have to go on, but I will go on. George Zimmerman told his story over and over again. Why? Why didn't he lawyer up? Because he had nothing to hide. And sure, there are some minor inconsistencies in his story. That's to be expected anytime a traumatized person tells the same story over and over and over again in detail. But the central story never changed, that he killed in self-defense. That story matches up with all of the medical and scientific evidence. That's the testimony of Dr. Vincent DeMaio, and it has never been refuted in this case. The prosecution has the burden of proof to show you that this was not a self-defense killing beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution has gone far away from getting that point across.
Midwin Charles, what did you see, if you're the defense lawyer, what did you see in the prosecution argument today that you need to make sure you address?
If I'm the defense lawyer, I focus on the fact that it was all the questions that the state threw out. I mean, if I were the defense attorney, I'd have my legal intern go home tonight and go through all the number of questions that they asked during their closing argument, which is not what you're supposed to do. As a prosecutor, you're supposed to say with certainty exactly how it happened. How did the fight start? Who threw the first punch? All we know for certain is how the fight ended. And that is one of the biggest problems with today's closing argument by the prosecutor.
Judge Alex, I was a little surprised that the prosecutor, who's going to get rebuttal time, did not focus more on the distinctions between second-degree murder and manslaughter. They're critical, and let's run through them both. To prove second-degree murder, the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant acted with a depraved mind, without regard for human life, and that the act was done from ill will, hatred, spite, or an evil intent. They do not have to prove that there was intent to cause death, although that's not really being debated in this case. Zimmerman is not contesting that he shot Trayvon Martin. To prove manslaughter, on the other hand, which is the lesser offense, they have to prove the killing of a human being by the act, procurement, or culpable negligence of another, and that the act was not excusable, which is another way of saying that it was not self-defense. How are those definitions going to be utilized by the defense tomorrow and then in the rebuttal by the prosecution?
Well, let me clarify something. I don't believe they're going under culpable negligence manslaughter, and that's because Florida has two different types, culpable negligence and manslaughter by act. Culpable negligence is basically a higher level of negligence, and they can't proceed under that under the law because it is not, what's alleged in the information is an intentional crime. It is not alleged to be a negligent act. Manslaughter by act basically is an unjustifiable killing. So what they're going to do is say this isn't self-defense, and if it is not self-defense, then it is by definition an unjustifiable killing, and it is by definition manslaughter. And it all comes down to the jury deciding whether or not George Zimmerman felt in fear of his life or serious bodily injury, and whether that fear was reasonable. If they say yes, then it's self-defense and he's acquitted. If they say no, then it's an unjustifiable killing and it's manslaughter by act.
Mr. Davis, I expected to hear from the prosecution today, and maybe I'll hear it in rebuttal, that part of the argument where he says, we believe we've proven beyond a reasonable doubt second-degree murder. However, ladies and gentlemen, if you conclude otherwise, then you've certainly got to find that manslaughter has been proven in this case. Did you think that he went a little soft on that, and is he leaving something in the tank, he, the prosecutor, for his rebuttal time?
Well, most certainly he may have missed the mark on that, as you just alluded to, counsel. But it's quite possible that they might need that to bring it home, as they say, in rebuttal time. They have their theory of the case. They are seasoned prosecutors. We are all here discussing them in the Monday morning quarterback mode for purposes of this show and so forth. But I would like to think that they know what they're doing and they are going to do the job, as will Mr. West and Mr. O'Mara, because they are all charged with the duty to act professionally in the way that they are acting.
Midwin Charles, who makes the closing argument for the defense? It was Don West who made the opening statement. He and Mark O'Mara have been sharing responsibilities. How do you think they've divvied up that responsibility?
I don't know. I mean, I say they go with the guy who did the opening. I think that was one of the best openings that I saw.
Despite the joke.
Exactly. Despite the joke. I'm not sure. I think between West and O'Mara, perhaps the jury may have picked up on that undercurrent that he has with the judge. So I don't know. Maybe Mark O'Mara might be the best person, but I think Don West has been a consistent person in terms of the witnesses. He's done a very good job of being able to turn state witnesses into actual defense witnesses.
But you know, Lisa, I think that they've clearly, and I said this to you a couple of nights ago, divvied this up, good cop, bad cop kind of thing. When there's heavy lifting to be done, it's Don West, and I'm not lessening the role that Mark O'Mara has played, but he's the softer sell kind of a guy, and I'm wondering if it won't be him tomorrow who delivers the closing argument for the defense.
You know, I'm interested to hear that take from you. I don't have that impression. I think that they're both outstanding attorneys. We have heard that Mark O'Mara is doing the closing arguments. That's why he was out of the courtroom for a portion of the hearing today, because he was preparing his closing. I think he is an extraordinarily effective advocate in that courtroom, Mark O'Mara is. He's the one who's been the most physical. He's the one that's been demonstrating with his own body, lying on the ground, moving things around. Both of them can stay very, very calm in the heat of battle, just making their points one after another, very meticulously. I got to tell you, if law students are watching, you want to watch Mark O'Mara's closing argument. You want to watch both of these defense attorneys throughout the trial.
Did you find, Lisa, did you find it unusual, and it was about this time last night, that's why it stands out in my mind, that Mark O'Mara had a press conference after they had rested their case and before he delivered a closing argument?
Yes, that is unusual, and I would fault it. The media strategy is a completely different topic. I don't like that he put his client on Hannity. That was one of the biggest blunders, because that's when he said that the killing of Trayvon Martin was God's plan, and that's clearly come back to bite him. I don't like that Mark O'Mara is doing nightly press conferences, but he has the right to do it, and he's doing it.
Lisa Bloom, thank you. Alex Ferrer, Joseph Haynes Davis, and Midwin Charles, we appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Up next.